defunct here. I'm always like a 1 second off.
So am I. I have to practice. I have to practice technology in advance, way in advance.
Yeah. All right. We are joined this hour. We are joined this hour by Jessica Helen Lopez, the second poet laureate of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just a phenomenal success within the slam scene. The author of 4 books, giving TED Talks, and we're really excited. But we really want to start off the story is in the beginning. So tell us how you got into poetry.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Matt, for having me. So I love to tell this story, actually, because I used to be a journalism major, and I was attending college in Las Cruces, which is, in New Mexico. Sorry about the traffic, and you may hear Chihuahuas barking as well in the background. So, but anyhow, I dropped out of college a couple of times. I just wasn't a very good student, and once I had my daughter, I realized that I really needed to, pursue a collegiate education. So I went back to school, and she was about 3 when I went back to school, and I was a journalism major, maybe. And then I took this introduction to poetry class taught by Mary Mae Moffett. She's still a really good friend of mine, super feminist, powerful educator. And I just fell in love with poetry. I never really wrote poetry, and it didn't really connect with me. And most likely that was because I didn't really read a lot of writers of color in school. As a matter of fact, I think maybe the first poet that I discovered on my own was Sandra Cisneros, and it really changed my relationship with poetry. But, many years after that is whenever I enrolled into that intro to poetry class, and the syllabus called for me to attend a live reading here in Albuquerque and to read a piece on the open mic. And so at that time, I don't know, that was like in 2005, I'd only written maybe 3 poems, all in that class. And so I got on the open mic at RB Winning Coffee Shop. They just closed their doors after many, 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 many years. We were sad to see them go. Yeah, I read a poem, and it was exhilarating and scary and nauseating and, oh man, exciting all at once. And I got approached by the slam master of, the city of Albuquerque, Albuquerque slams, and that was Don MacGyver. And he invited me to my first slam, which was poetry and beer. So I attended because poetry and beer. And so, then I saw these slam poets on stage, and it was just so invigorating. Ken Rodriguez, Danny Solis, these were vatos that I had been reading in an anthology in said introduction to poetry class at the community college, and so I was kind of starstruck. That I slammed that night for the very first time. I don't know how I had the ganas to do it, but I did. And I made it to the second round, which was, enticing enough for me to come back. And I actually became a regular at PNB. And, years later, I became the host of PNB for several years. So that's kind of my introduction to poetry, the local poetry community, spoken word. And then I was lucky enough to try out for the city slam team and make it that year. I really didn't think I had a shot in hell. But I guess I just kind of cut my teeth on going to a lot of slams, and I was ready. That was my first team, was 2006.
Yeah. So, for those, this is going to be viewed by a wide cross section of people. So I'm very interested for you to, what would be nice for you to tell the audience right now a little bit about what is slam?
It's the competitive art of spoken word poetry. It's as old as time. It honors oral traditions and storytelling. But there are rules applied to it. So, it's usually a 3-round competition in which poets will take the stage and perform or read their original work. They can't go over 3 minutes, or they're penalized. There are judges in the audience. They are pre-selected, but they're random, and they shouldn't know anybody that's in the slam. So these judges are selected from the audience, and they actually, the criteria to judge a poet poem, is based on a combination of, how the judge and the audience respond to it, how they emote to it, the content of the poem, the performance of the poem. And it's from a 0.0 to a 10.0 on an Olympic scale value. And we use the point system because the decimal point system, so we can avoid ties. We drop the high, we drop the low. And then the 3 scores in the middle are tabulated. And that's the score for that poet's poem in that particular round. and you always have like an MC who hosts the show and kind of, guides it along its way. And then you have a bout manager and a team that are tabulating the scores. So it's very much community oriented. And of course, you have the audience, right? You can't have a poetry slam without poets and the audience. And so it's definitely a communal event. And I also think it's something that's really promoted the democratization of poetry. And its accessibility for poetry, at least within, the recent generations. So I was just really attracted to the sport of it all. It was fun competition. Some people take it a little bit more seriously than others. But it's great too, because once you get on a team, then, you can travel to regional competitions and national competitions, and you're practicing all summer with your poet friends, and you're writing collaborative pieces, and you're memorizing your pieces. And I've got to, I've had a lot of many wonderful experiences because of slam poetry, and I've been able to travel a lot because of poetry in general.
Yeah. So you make a slam team, you end up competing at a national competition. Can you tell the audience a little bit more what those national competitions are like?
Oh man. And I think, Austin actually hosted the subsequent nationals the following year, but it moves around from city to city. A city will bid on a national event, and then the community in that city will rally around putting together and producing this national competition. So you've got slam poets, slam teams that are usually comprised of 4 to 5 team members, and their coach or coaches. And then, of course, poetry entourage traveling from their respective cities to nationals, the national city, right? And so it's something like 500 plus poets. And then, the whole community, the whole city's engaged. So in advance, they know about the national event. And, this is really wonderful for local businesses, theater spaces, and performance spaces, because the poets generally just take over. And it's a whole lot of fun. You're going to hear a lot of poetry. And there are, types of bouts that you got to fight your way through so you can hopefully make it to the final stage. I've only ever been on the final stage twice, and that was for group piece finals, something that's kind of held at nationals as its own, side competition. But yeah, I always walk away inspired, because you are meeting people from all over the country and the world. Really, there are poets from France, Mexico, Canada, Africa, and you are connecting with folks. It's a really powerful tool to inspire, just a general connectivity among people. But yeah, with a little bit of, late night poetry readings and maybe imbibing some spirits, but and I've had some experiences I'm not going to share on this interview, but they're amazing. I've been able to go to Wisconsin and California and Denver and Austin, and I got to see a lot of the country because of national and regional events.
Yeah. Can you speak to a little bit of the networking that happens at these events?
Oh yeah, sure. You connect with folks who, curate their own shows back at home, and most of the cities that are sending slam teams, that's my Chihuahua canina. That's going to happen because I have a lot of hood cats that door, and they like to piss her off through the screen door. So she's going to bark here and there. Yeah, right. So people send a slam team, and usually that slam team is coming from a city or, a town in which, poetry is really highlighted, and probably a lot of, grassroots and local poetry readings that happen in those cities. So when you go to a national event, you're connecting with folks. You're saying, oh yeah, I'll come to your town. I'm going to go on tour. Actually, I've got a new book coming up, and I want to go on a 10-city tour. And so you can book with folks. And likewise, I used to host a lot of the slam shows back in the day. And so same thing, I would, meet up with new folks, especially those I'm like, ooh, I love their work. Come slam, come feature in Albuquerque. So yeah, and then also opportunities for, even publications. You know, because, you know, people run small presses or they want to help you out with your chapbook or something of that nature. So yeah, there's a lot of networking that happens at those events.
And can you share with our audience a little bit about the dynamics of a group piece?
Oh, the dynamics of the group piece?
Or just generally speaking, dynamics of a group piece.
Sure. At first I thought you said groupie. I was like, you want to hear about poetry groupies? Is it this kind of interview? No.
Family friendly.
The group piece, yeah, for sure. Well, this is how we operate with our group piece, and for the most part, you know, I've heard that this is how teams do it, but it differs, you know, slightly from community to community. But usually, you know, it starts with, you know, our very first team practice. You know, after the team has been selected through a competition, a city championship, we'll gather around at somebody's kitchen table. Usually, the coaches. I was the coach for the slam team. Recently, I was a coach for our youth team recently. And so we had a lot of practices here and my kitchen table in my living area. Yeah, and we just start talking about what we want to write about. What do you want to write about? What's on your mind? What are some hot topic issues? What are some important things that you want to discuss and you want to share? And so we'll create that list first, and then we'll go through the list. And you know, there's always folks that say, I want to write to that too. I want to write to that too. I want to write to that topic as well. And so it might be a duet. It might be a trio. It might be a quartet. It might be a quartet. And then somebody figures out later, this is not the piece for me. And it goes down to a trio. So it's always evolving throughout the summer. That's why practicing a lot is really important. But first things first is we start with sitting down and writing. So we are going to be writing about, now my dog is barking at the paleta man, the paletero. I swear to God. Sorry. Cleo, come here, Cleo. All right. I've been on Zoom meetings and all these things like since the shelter in place, and my dog never fails to make a camera. Cleo, she's the one who's making all the ruckus. But yeah, so we'll write about it, and we each have our individual writing, and then somebody will take the task of weaving all of the stories together. So let's say if it's, you know, a trio, right? So there are 3 different pieces of writing from 3 different authors on the slam team, all to the same prompt. And then a person will weave it together. And it's a matter of really editing and keeping an eye on the overall messaging and the poeticism of it as well, because we want to make sure that through the lens of poetry and utilizing poetic devices, we're sharing our story for an ultimate kind of performative experience for the audience, right? And I'm a firm believer too, if it looks good on stage, I think it should look good on page, and to really massage what that looks like on page too, right? And so then once we have a script, we'll go through it, and then we attribute lines to each poet. And it's very much like if they were in a play, right? They have to memorize it. We usually memorize our work. You don't have to, but we do. We get highlighters and highlight, you know, lines that belong to various people, and we just do a run through. And that's how we realize, oh, that language is clunky right there. Or, ooh, we like that, we're keeping that. Ooh, I've got an idea for, a gesture or a motion that you could do to this. And then usually we stand up and we allow it to organically evolve. So if I'm coaching, I might say, all right, you know, poets, let's read this out loud now, standing up. We've made some cuts after doing a table read. We realize we need to clean up this language here, here, here. Now let's try it standing up and putting in the kinesthetic work around it, the body work, because it feels a lot different when you're engaging it in that way. And then we just allow it to happen. We just run it. And movements come out naturally. And then sometimes as we keep moving along, we think, let's try this gesture or movement here. And some group pieces can get really choreographed, and those are really exciting too. So that's kind of the gist of how it comes together. And then we just practice that bad boy. You know, one of many group pieces that a team is working on all summer, ad nauseum, to the point where it just happens, right? And so that way we're getting ready for the nerves when we go to nationals and compete, because when you get on a stage and there's this lit audience at a national event and all your favorite poets are watching you, you can get really nervous. So it's really important to practice as much as possible so that it's just body memory at that point, even if you feel like having an out-of-body experience because you're nervous on the stage.
Yeah. So what additional skills do you have, what additional skills do you have to bring to transition from being a an excellent performance poet to being a coach? Like what do you have to like shift up in your mind when you're trying to get someone to improve what they're doing?
That's a really good question, Matt. I like that question. Yeah, I didn't even think about coaching when I first started slamming because I was just taking it all in. It took me several years to think about coaching. And it kind of just happened naturally because then we started having, greener poets, make the teams because the team changes every year. And I was on like 6 teams almost, I think, in a row, 7 teams, something like that. And so you meet these, greener poets. And so you have a few years experience under your belt. And so with great empathy, you share your knowledge that you have, with your new teammates. And that somehow evolves into imparting knowledge about, everything from how I explained to you how a group piece is written. The first time I didn't know what I was doing. And so it's just a matter of kind of having that patience and taking the time to start from the foundation of where you need to be as a spoken word artist. And then definitely as you evolve and work with the team. I am a teacher. I'm an educator. So I've been a teacher for many, many years. I teach at UNM, Chicana and Chicano Studies Department, and I teach at the Native American Community Academy. I teach poetry for their dual enrollment courses, so they get collegiate credit. So I've been teaching poetry a really, really long time. And my philosophy of teaching is through play. If you're having fun, for me, that makes me very happy if you're also simultaneously learning. So I'm not a coach that is cutthroat. That's just not my style. But I like for things to happen on their own, but with guidance, right? So I try to individualize the feedback that I give to the poets that I coach, but also keep in mind the things, our goals, our goals like, what do you want to do this summer? What are your goals? Do you want to be highly competitive? Usually from Burke, they always want to be competitive. And so just trying to have that balance act, but also know that the poets, they are, lovely human beings and not every day is their best day. And so to just go with the flow, because if it's not fun, then I'm not sure why we're doing it in the first place. And sometimes, poets get stuck. And so we try other tactics, if we just can't, a poet can't really just wrap their head around with the writing they want, just take a break. We'll come back to it the next day. So yeah, it just depends. It's a great question you're asking me. No one's asked me that question before. So yeah, it's great to think about how that transition came to be.
How is being a slam coach different from being a poetry teacher in a university?
Oh, well, not much. I have a lot of fun with my students at the university, Chicano Studies. In fact, as I've created my curriculum throughout all these years, I teach something called Borderlands Poetics. And it's with Gloria Anzaldua's The New Mestiza Borderlands book in mind. So it kind of guides us in the discovery of writing for cultural identity, the in-betweenness, what Gloria Anzaldúa calls nepantla. I very much think that that's what spoken word slam poetry is, because you've got some haters out there. And they're like, that's not poetry. And then it's also so subversive, it still is, even after all of these years, I believe so. If you go into a coffee shop or a library and you see somebody standing up doing poetry and you don't really go to those spaces, it's going to affect you. It's going to move you. You don't see that a lot. And so in those ways, I think it's subversive because it's an act of resistance through art. So whenever I'm teaching at, Chicano Studies, we read a lot, but we also study a lot of spoken word artists. And nowadays, slam poets are publishing books, thank goodness. And so we can see a video online and also read their text, like Denez Smith, right? And so in the poetry classes, We operate the same way. I give them prompts and they all write to it, and then we workshop model it. We try to cultivate a safe space, much like a slam practice. You want to, it's a powerful place to be vulnerable when you're writing something and sharing it immediately. So we need those safe spaces of support for one another. So I really do operate my slam practices and my poetry classes in very similar ways, except I have to abide by, grading system and things of that nature in my classes. But once again,
point two.
yeah, yeah. So,
so what I wanted to ask you next is about your, there's kind of always been seen as like this kind of like split, or there often is a split between what's essentially like the literati kind of group and then the slam scene, right? And they intersect a little, but most cities, the literati's got kind of a grip on the poet laureateship, where there is a poet laureateship. So you're one of the very few people to come out of slam or have at least a lot of experience in slam, and also be awarded this very prestigious honor. Was there any kind of how did that go?
yeah, I like that question. And I think you see it more and more that slam poets are becoming poet laureates of their cities. Bobby Lefebvre is the current Denver poet laureate. Right now, we just inaugurated our very first state poet laureate, and that's Levi Romero. And he's not a slam poet per se, but he identifies as a locura poet, a lowrider poet, right? And he's also an educator at the university. And so even though I was the second poet laureate of the city of Albuquerque, the first poet laureate was Hakeem Bellamy. And Hakeem Bellamy is a renowned slam poet. Here in Albuquerque, a lot of our poetry community is so filled with slam poets, right? We've hosted national events here. We've hosted Women of the World Poetry Slam Nats here. We hosted the national event in 2005 here. And so I think our city understands that our poets are slam poets and they're academic poets, but that blend is happening so much now. I don't think it's fair anymore to say, oh, that's an academic poet and that's a slam poet, because they're academic slam poets, right? And that publish a lot and teach as well. I think that might have been more the case maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, definitely beyond that, but not so much anymore. And I think the reason is because slam poets are often engage their community, right? Through community events, community organizing, activism, what I like to call artivism. You'll see poets at the front lines of, a march against ICE. You'll see poets speaking at, the women's rallies across the cities in New Mexico, Santa Fe and Taos and Albuquerque, and they're seen a lot because they're out in the community. They're teaching workshops in the detention centers. They're teaching workshops at South Valley Academy. They're teaching workshops with boys and young men of color groups. So I think it's fair to say that it's fitting that a lot of these spoken word artists should be poet laureates, because poets laureate are ambassadors of poetry. And that's definitely the case with a lot of spoken word artists. They're not only poets, but they're community organizers as well.
So in addition to all the success you had in slam, you are the author of 4 collections of poetry. Can you tell us a little about that first one?
Oh, sure. Look at this. Here are my books right here. Lo and behold. So this one's Always Messing with Them Boys. This is my very first book. And it was published by West End Press. The late John Crawford was the founder, he and his wife, Pat Smith. And that publishing company ran many years, I think spanned 30 plus years, and it came out of Chicago, but when they transplanted it to Albuquerque. And the reason I'm talking about John and West End Press before I can get to my book is because they gave me a chance, right? They were a small press. They published the likes of Sandra Cisneros and Levi Romero, these poets of color and working class poets. And I was about to publish my book with a different publisher, and some of my poetry was a little too feminist in a sense. And I just didn't want it to be censored. And then John met me, and I invited him over for some burritos that I made for him. And we realized we were a good fit. So this is Always Messing with Them Boys. It's a collection of survival, you know, over childhood traumas, but also a celebration of life, I'd like to think, and also the celebration of self, especially as a feminista. And so that was my first one. And then there's another one that I don't have here, but it was especially created by Swimming with Elephants publication called The Language of Bleeding. I was invited to Nicaragua, the international festival, when I was first the poet laureate. And so I wanted to have something in Spanish and in English. And so at that time, I was already with Swimming with Elephants publications. That's Katrina Crespin. And we were able to put that together. I don't have a copy of that here. I don't know where it went. And then there's the infamous cunt bomb. It's a little chewed up. That might have been because of my chihuahua. But it's just a little chapbook. And I put this together because I was pissed off because I was teaching a workshop to some young women in a high school who were all going through various things, but mostly they were young teenage parents, right? And so it was a very special workshop with very special, lovely ladies. And I wanted to share a particular poem by Marty McConnell. And it was an ode poem to the body. And she uses the word cunt in it, right? And one of the male coordinators found out and just totally shamed me and chastised me. And I didn't back down. I said, there's nothing wrong with this poem. And if anything, that word is within the body of that poem by Marty McConnell as a reclamation. And I think that these young, smart ladies can understand and handle that. We're going to explicate this poem together, right? And it's about rejecting shame. And nonetheless, I was shamed. So that pissed me off. And I wrote the poem Cunt Bomb, which is in the book, it's the titular poem. But I had I wasn't going to try to publish it, and I wasn't sure if it would get published. But there was Kat from Swimming with Elephants publication. She's like, let's publish that bitch. And I was like, okay. Could we call it Cunt Bomb? And she's like, yes, we can call it Cunt Bomb. I was like, are you sure? And I had some hesitation. I had some doubts about it. Is somebody but there are books like Ignamucio's Cunt, right? I'm a big fan of her work. And so we decided to go with it, and I'm really glad that we did. And last but not least, and this is my last one, this is my most recent book, Provocateur, Elephants publication. This is Ben Harrison. He's a local artist. He's a good friend now, but we saw him displaying his work at Art Walk here in Albuquerque, and it's important, to try to collaborate with other artists. And so Provocateur, I was just putting pieces together since Cunt Bomb. And Kat really helped me edit my pieces. And that was released last summer. And I'm actually working on a new collection. And hopefully it'll be done by the end of this summer, So, but I've had the most, it's been great to put together these new collections and feel supported by my community and then share the work.
So you mentioned your first book was it was not published and they wanted you to change the content. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I can't even remember what poem in particular it was, but see, the thing is, the editor, we're getting ready to sign the contract and get the book published, and she said, send me 3 pieces and I'm going to put them on the website. And so I did. And gosh, I really can't even remember what they were. I mean, one of the titles is called On the Eve of My Abortion. Right. And so I tackle these types of topics, and I don't think that she really understood what kind of writer I was. And I don't even think she read the poems before she put them on the website. She put them on the website, and there was a lot of backlash from the three pieces. People were writing in the commentary that they didn't, agree with me. Body autonomy, they didn't agree with that. Women's right to, reproductive options, they didn't agree with that. And I realized too, we just weren't a really good fit. I think that the following for that particular press was very conservative, and I was not going to fit in there. So, so that's kind of what happened. And then, I was really sad about that. because my friends had even put together like a little pachanga and like, congratulations, Jessica, your book's getting published. And then it didn't happen. It was a shock. It was a surprise. And it's not, I don't think that was the first time, but it was one of the biggest times I've had to defend my writing. And that really made me learn how to defend my writing, you know, and how to stick to my guns as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, they rejected your content, but, you know, and said you need to whatever, but you went on to be the poet laureate and represent all poetry of the city. So
eventually it all worked out.
So what's it like to give so what's it like to give a TED Talk?
Ooh, TED Talks. Yeah, I mean, I'm a slam poet, so I just weaved some poems together in a theme. Poetry is medicine for me, right? And so it soothes, it's cathartic. You know, we know these things for social, emotional health and wellness and holistic wellness. And so I just wanted to put together some of the pieces that really helped me heal. That was really my theme. You know, playing off of a place of her own, a room of her own, a poem of her own. So I selected 3 pieces that I wrote about certain times in my life that were very hard for me, yet I survived nonetheless, you know, as so many of us do. And I wanted to recognize that resiliency. And so, yeah, I just practiced. I mean, it's cool. They mic you up with the little Britney Spears mic and all that good stuff. But the audience is rapt. And I've actually done one official TED Talk, and then I've also performed like in between speakers at other TED Talks. And one year, actually, I just remember this, I was the host of a TED Talk. That year, though, I was like, yo, if you ask me to be the host, sure. Because, you know, TED Talks, they don't pay. They don't pay. And that's fine. And I understand why some people don't want to do them because they don't pay. But I always feel like it's a nice trade-off for me because I get this video, I'll put it in my digital, you know, curriculum vitae or whatever the case may be. But that particular year when they asked me to host, I said, okay, but I want you to consider my youth team to perform a TED Talk. And this wasn't the Albuquerque youth team. This was out of my NACA class. That my kids founded something called Res Spit. They're from the Res and they spit, and it's all indigenous, all queer, you know, youth slam collective, and they're amazing. They're all graduating high school now, but this was a couple years ago. And so they said, sure, well, they have to audition just like everybody else. So they did, and then they got it, right? And they just tore the house down. And so, you know, yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for folks who want to put their work out there. You know, if it's something that you feel like you want to do without monetary compensation, there's a lot of perks, you know, but I can also see how that model doesn't work for everybody, for working artists.
Yeah. So part of the series, we've been trying to highlight different and collect like oral histories around different venues, writing collectives, and I'm very interested in doing a little bit of research about you to hear more about La Palabra, the word is woman.
Word. La Palabra, the word is a woman. That came out around the time I was hanging out with my homegirls. I'm still hanging out with my homegirls. We were poets and photographers and dancers. And I think it was right before Cunt Bomb. Well, it was right before Cunt Bomb. I just wanted to establish a collective where we could hang out together and write together and create art together. And so I started hosting a series of workshops at my house. And we just get together. And then I realized we should publish a book. Let's do that. And so we figured out how to publish that online. Even Katrina was involved, or she was a co-editor of it, but Swimming with Elephants Publications wasn't around at that time. So SWEP is 5 years old. And if you guys get a chance, or if you get a chance, Matt, to check out their website, they have published a vast amount of writers across the country. So anyhow, so we decided to put a book together, but that wasn't enough. I love ekphrastic writing. I love ekphrastic writing. So like if you take a piece of art, like a photo or a painting, and you sit down and you write to it, meditate upon it, write to it, and then out comes a piece. And I love a poem side by side with another piece of art. It's my jam. And so my best friend, Mariah Bottomley, who lives in Denver, but she's a photographer. And so we concocted the plan. Let's take pictures of ourselves, the topography of our bodies, with their stretch marks and their scars and large breasted bodies and small breasted bodies and long hair and short hair and all these things. And so we asked the women if they wanted to be the models, and they did. There was a friend of ours too who had just survived cancer, and so this was really remarkable for her to participate, and brave and amazing that she did. So yeah, we all took photos. They're all in the book, which became La Palabra, the collective. Cleo, come here. Sorry. And we wrote poems to it. So the book somewhere, I don't know where it's at, but that was La Palabra in the beginning. It was a book. It was us. It was homegirls hanging out, shooting shit, writing poetry, sharing our art, concocting plans, publishing a book, and then it went online. And so now we have a forum on social media where we, invite folks, and you don't have to be, gender, you don't have to gender identify as a woman, but allies are welcome as well. But it's all inclusive. And so it's a place we can gather and share our stories and articles that we find interesting through the lens of, inclusive, intersectional feminism. And yeah, it was lots of fun, that book. Come here, Cleo.
So I'm also interested in the work you talk about, kind of these interacting with other artists and kind of multidisciplinary kind of events or presentations. I'm interested in the work that you do over at UNM. Can you speak a little bit about the Chicano studies, Irene Vasquez, and the things that are going on there right now?
Yeah, Dr. V, man, she's one of my mentors. She's amazing. After 40 years, this was very historical. The program was departmentalized. So it was a program for 40 some years, Chicano studies. And through Dr. Vasquez's efforts and bringing the community together, it was departmentalized. And so it's a department. And ever since then, as a department, we fight for more monies for ethnic studies, for our school to be a sanctuary school so that our undocumented relatives are not harassed, which it is, even though they haven't gone formal in saying they're a sanctuary school. But there are now safety protocols in place in which teachers include in their syllabus that they won't allow ICE to come into the classrooms. A lot of that was through the efforts of the Chicano Studies Department and other departments too. They band together with the African American Studies and queer studies and ethnic studies. And so as an undergrad, I took a couple of Chicano Studies classes. And although it wasn't my major or my minor, I felt at home there. And that's where I met Levi Romero, our poet laureate. And he was a mentor. It's a very familiar place. It's very family oriented. You can go into we have a casita. We don't call it an office. And it literally is a casita. You can go to our casita and you'll find chihuahuas in there, babies in strollers, and students studying and teachers talking to students. And it feels like home. And I'm just very honored to have been invited to teach Borderlands. And I've been teaching Borderlands now, I think this is the 9th time I've taught it. I'm currently teaching it now, but we've just had to shift to online classrooms. But and then I've also taught some classes like Writers in the Community, in which you are helping out writers be placed in the community to teach writing. So they might work with the our elders in the elderly living situations, or in the jails, or in elementary schools, teaching writing. And so that was really cool. I got to be very meta about curriculum and supporting folks in drafting their own kind of lesson plans and mentoring them in their challenges and their successes throughout a semester as they worked with different populations and neighborhoods, teaching writing. That was really cool. I really liked that a lot. And then, getting to work with the first year learning community there. It's really important that we stay very connected with our freshmen, right? Because it's one thing to get them in the door, and it's another thing to retain our young Chicana and Chicano students and students of color. So it's a cohort that follows like something like 78 plus freshmen every year through the cohort to support them. So I would actually got to teach with Dr. Vasquez, and I was so, oh my God, I was so excited, but also so nervous. Like, I'm teaching with Dr. V. And this was the FLC class. So it was like 80 kids. And like, I'd never taught in like a big sprawling class like that before. But even though there was like technology and everything in the classroom and it was big, it still felt like home. And that's kind of the DNA of Chicano studies here at UNC.
So you throughout this interview, you've mentioned the work of Gloria Anzaldúa several times. This is going to reach a wide cross section of people who maybe are not so familiar with her. Can you speak to the work of Gloria Anzaldúa and why it's so significant to our movement and to poetry specifically?
Yeah, Gloria Anzaldúa is my shero. So she was born of the borderlands of Texas, right, to farm worker parents. She's no longer with us. She passed on several years ago, but she's left behind a legacy of breathtaking work, Chicano theory, queer theory, philosophy, and thought, poetry, and art. But the idea of Nepantla and borderlands is a prevalent theme throughout her work, right? That the borderlands itself is a very specific place that always vibrates with in-betweenness, right? And that it is constructed by the folks that live in the borderlands, whether you're talking about the US frontera, Mexico, and the United States, or even further up, east in like Chicago, right? Where you have transplants and immigrants and people that have brought their culture to a new place, and it starts in itself becoming a borderlands, right? So I identify as a pocha, which was a pejorative for many, many years, meaning that I lost my Spanish tongue and I'm a cultural traitor. Well, that's only because I'm so many generations removed, right? And my culture has been appropriated and punished. My mother's first language was Spanish, and it was beat out of her in public schools, literally. And so by the time she raised me, she didn't want me to to speak Spanish. She didn't want me to endure that. And so she didn't teach me or my brothers, and we grew up in a household of Spanglish speaking. In betweenness, right? You're neither here nor there. You have your feet straddling one world and the other. And in between that, what is there? And so she really explored that idea through spirituality and mysticism and art and joteria, identifying as queer. And what is it like for a queer person to love and a queer person to love another queer person? And I've always felt it just really spoke to me on a very deep level, especially as an artist. Every time I crack open that book, I'm learning something new, and I teach through that book. And so it just depends on where I'm at in my life, and it affects me differently all the time. I was lucky enough to be selected to perform at a Gloria Anzaldúa International Conference in Paris in May. So I took my daughter, Mia Sopapia, she's 17. And we had a blast. We went there for a week, and I got to meet all of these amazing, scholars and poets and artists from across the world who came to this conference. So her legacy is thriving, and it lives on, and it in itself has become a borderland.
I like that. So you mentioned several times also Swimming with Elephants Press. I want to ask you right now a little bit. What is it about you that attracts you to working with a independent press that you can have? I mean, well, I don't know. I'm actually answering my own question. So let me ask you, what is it you like about working with an independent press?
Yeah. Well, because there's a lot of autonomy there, right? And so if I have an idea about the cover art or how I want to, format the writing or what it needs to look like, or if I want so-and-so to maybe write a forward for me, independent presses give you that flexibility, right? And so, and it's very one-on-one. And so I'm working directly with my editor. Today, my editor dropped off books that I ordered on my porch. I'm lucky enough that cat like lives like 10 blocks from me. But yeah, and then also I think it's so individualized. So for me, I'm a single mom, so I can't just like go tour, and I teach a lot and I'm working. So SWEP will help me if I want to just put a little mini tour together, but know and understand that I can't tour, 3 months straight. I don't even have it in me to do that. And so, yeah, and I think too, SWEP has come a really long way. I don't even know how many titles they've published, but they do great work, and they just listen. They listen to the artist, and Kat herself is a writer too, so she understands. She understands that that's your work, and at least for this particular independent press, they're not going to try to censor you or change it. And that's why I feel at home with Swimming with All its publications. And then you've got your whole network too of these poets that are under the SWEP house, and you're connecting with them as well. And so there's this whole other networking possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to interview Mercedes Holtry, and she had nothing but glowing words for SWEP. At this point, can you tell us a little bit about what is the Albuquerque poetry scene like? What are some of the venues? What are some of the things people should know about Albuquerque poetry?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Burke Revolt just celebrated their 1-year anniversary a few months back. Burke Revolt is a 501c3, the first of its kind here in Albuquerque. It's a slam community. And before there was ABQ Slams, the longest running slam community thus far. I think they're like about 23 years old, I think. But we have tons of hot spots of where poets gather. There's also Mindwell, and that's run by Zachary Kluckman. And then lots of open mics. On a weekly basis, you can go to an open mic or a slam. So for Burke Revolt, and I sit on the board of that, Burke Revolt, we have 4-5 monthly shows. And so there's a slam or an open mic every week. We have Respira, and that's hosted at Red Planet Indigenous Comic Books Shop in downtown Albuquerque. And I think that's the last Sundays of each month. And that's the Queer Poetry Slam, and allies are welcome. Woke, which is Women of Color, and that's at El Shante Casa de Cultura, and that's actually run by a youth poet, Sarita Sol Gonzalez, the daughter of the third Albuquerque Poet Laureate, Manuel Gonzalez. It runs in the family. And then there is Lobo Slam. I'm the Lobo Slam advisor because I do teach at UNM Chicano Studies. And so I actually connect my curriculum with my Borderlands class to Lobo Slam. So I require, just like my teacher did back in the day, my students to go to that slam for the whole time they're in my class that semester. And then they have a final show that Lobo Slam helps to host. And that's under Burke Revolt. That's just across the street from the university. And then we have our youth slam, and that's ABQ Unidos. And that's at a youth space called Warehouse 508. Mercedes probably mentioned that. She's the youth coordinator for that. And that's where we select, that's where youth compete to be on the youth city slam team. And last year, Mercedes and I were co-coaches, and we took our team to Las Vegas, and they competed in Brave New Voices. They did very well, and they made it into semifinals. And every one of them, this was their first time going to a national event. Lots of those kids came from NACA, my students. There was one student that came from my Borderlands class, actually, as well, Alicia Salazar. And so it's really important to connect, I think, the classes in our poetry classes and our writing classes, whether it's in elementary, middle school, high school, or our colleges here, the community, and that's through the slams. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's always something going on here in Albuquerque. If you want to find poetry, it's not hard to find. Damian Flores runs Poetry and Beer. It's still going. It's at Tractor now, and that's a whole lot of fun. I took my Borderlands class there this semester, right before the pinche coronavirus, and it was packed. It was walls. It was wall to wall. It was just high energy. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
I'm gonna put you on a little spot right now. Is there any way you could perform a poem from your newest collection?
Sure, but I'm not gonna do it memorized.
Yeah, right there. Mhm.
I have the book. Oh, look at that. Matt. Look at here's my book. Sure. Okay. Let me see. Uh, and I apologize. My allergies are kicking in. I live right by the river. The Rio Grande is just over the bridge from my casa, and the bosque there, the forest on each side of the river. It's springtime, so it's releasing all the things that don't allow me to breathe very well. Okay, I'll read this one. It's a love letter from Chavela Vargas to Frida Kahlo. Chavela Vargas was um, a singer from not Mexico. Lots of people think that she was, but from Costa Rica. And her and Frida met at a party that Frida threw once in front of her house in Coyoacan, her blue house. And she was already with Diego, but that didn't stop Chavela. And they fell in love and they had this torrid affair before Chavela took off and, became the famous singer that she was and traveled everywhere. But I always imagine, what if they would have stayed together? In any case, here's a love letter from Chavela to Frida. Fridita, you are my shadow twin, my wicked release, my dark and tiny dove. Eres mi beso de plumas del colibri. Ruby-throated hummingbird of the sacred song, named deer of Coyoacan, keeper of the blue house. Fawn and fair mexica, xolo itzcuintli. I knew when I met you on that cobblestone street, I would leave you. Your heart a nopal, the scarlet flesh of it throbbing, sweet and rich and meant for another. But for a moment we danced and laughed our way through life. I was your enchanted cantante, you my whirling baile. Your eyebrows together were a swallow in mid-flight, your lips a blessed altar. And I laid my head in your lap, the plush cushion of your thighs. You smelled of sugar and juice of succulents, tobacco y tequila. You smelled of earth and root, Mexican hawthorn, little manzanitas of the desert, red berry and crooked twist spine of bark. I ran my tongue across the railroad of your scars, the brown buttons of your nipples, Redita, woman of another world, mi Tijuana bride. When I first saw you, knew I would love you, leave you, knowing that remembering is the longest part. Your kisses linger like mezcal on the tongue, the bite of the agave, honey and fire, life and death, sleep and dream, snake and worm, the in-between. And here, aquí, you and I are young forever, por vida, mijita, forever. Ah, Fridita, paloma negra. When I am gone, do not let that man tear you asunder, that man of gluttonous belly and ego, wasteland of no loyalty. Do not let him take your spirit, susto, tethered by a thin string floated in the ether. Do not scissor your hair from scalp, for it is a sacred snaking, flowing black river of onyx, and I am lost in its currents. Ah, chulita. Woman of wolves, when I first met you, I didn't know what you wanted to tell me, but I shut your mouth with my kisses, and like that, we spent many, many hours. Paloma negra, paloma negra. I grow mad with the hours I am with you. I grow wanton with the hours without you. I am your dedicated soldada. I will wrench and gnash my teeth at those who would harm you. Paloma negra, paloma negra. I am your Chavela, your Isabel of the rugged rainforest of Costa Rica. I am your Caribbean coastline, and you, my city girl, Mexicana revolucionaria estudiante, my scholar and warrior. My love for you is a shining obelisk. Paloma negra, paloma negra. I must leave you now. And I know my words pierce the armor of your heart, the burr and needles quilted across your clavicle of tropical bird and song, your fawn-like clavicle, your clavicle made from my mouth, my searching fingers, my unwavering and unfaltering love, my desire made of lapis on fire, amber on fire, turquoise and coral on fire. I am hammered gold, and you, the soft dewdrop of the pearl. The skin across your belly is bizcochito soft, and I taste the paste of you, blood-rusted red atole. I pinch it between my pursed lips and bleed with you. We are the secreted, hushed, moonly women, the call of the Yoni sisters. We are the spirited birds who fly above all earthly things, away from all men. And the patriarch is a faded painting, a mural no one remembers. I must leave you now. Sweet twin, shadow self, the remembering is the longest of all. And when I drop the tiny glittering opal of saliva to your lips, you drink it down like a thirsting woman, a hummingbird sipping dew. Redita, I must leave you now. Into your melon soft ears I whisper, I know, you said, I know. And your eyes glittered as if millennium-aged coal, black and fraught with the violence of transformation, the beauty of death and metamorphosis, like the moment right before the coal is squeezed into a diamond, like the moment right before the withered leg sprouts wings. I want to be inside your darkest everything.
I was singing your praises, but I muted myself. Oh, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. So, really appreciate you joining us for this hour. Again, this is a DAW Center for the Arts signature speaker series. We were joined this hour by Albuquerque's second poet laureate, Jessica Helen Lopez, and her wonderful dog, and and the sounds of the Rio Grande. So we were really blessed to have you. Is there anything you want to tell us? Any advice, wisdom you want to share with young writers just getting into the craft?
Yes, keep a journal on you. Keep a journal, whether it's this tiny or this big or something you crafted together, whether you think it's good writing or not. Just keep writing. There's no wrong, just write. That's what my friend once said to me, Carlos Contreras, and I believe in that. So keep that journal always.
And we will drop the links to your work below. So.
Cool. Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you.
Thank you too. Talk soon.
Gracias. Have a good night.